come on, dude. This album's like actually pretty fire, man. Matt Heafy's very talented and he's actually a great ambassador.
Listen, dude, I don't care. If it doesn't sound like it was recorded on a 4-track in the frostbitten forest of nowhere with a faucet and a washing machine on in the background with absolutely no bass whatsoever, I don't fuck with it, bro.
But... What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the heaviest show in the universe. My name is Kane Irvine, and today we are reviewing Matt Heafy's brand new black metal inspired project, IBARAKI, with the album RASHOMON. Now, when I first heard that Matt Heafy was doing a black metal project, I was really skeptical, like I'm sure a lot of you are. Trivium isn't the most favored band among black metal musicians or black metal fans, and so it's odd to think that he would be doing a black metal project himself. But Matt Heafy is a great ambassador for all genres of music. He's kind of like a Fenriz in that way, where he knows so much info about so many different genres, and he likes so many different genres of metal and music in general. But not only is this incredibly black metal influence, this is also incredibly influenced by his own Japanese heritage, which is so cool. And apparently he's been working on and recording these songs in this project for the past 10 years, and that shows up in a lot of different ways on this album. So let's get right into it. So like I just said, he's been writing and recording different songs for this album for the past 10 years. And that really does show on the first two songs of this album, Kagutsushi and Ibaraki Doji. Of course, I absolutely butchered those names, most likely, but these songs sound like Trivium. They sound like Trivium from 2010, 2011 with some Japanese culture and a little bit of black metal thrown in. And they're really good songs, but there's nothing really jumping out from what Trivium usually does on those first two tracks. So that means there's nothing really wrong with that. They're pretty good damn tracks, they're bangers. But it's not what I was really expecting when I heard that Matt Heafy was doing a black metal inspired project with Nurgle and Ishan. For instance, Ibaraki Doji is very symphonic. It's very Emperor influenced. It sounds like Emperor and Trivium mixed into one. But the further we go into this album, the more mature the music gets, the more Japanese influence the music gets, the more black metal the influence gets. And the first time I really noticed this, the first time it really hit me on this album was Jigoku Daya, which is a song about a Japanese courtesan, which is basically a high-end prostitute, and she ends up meeting this monk who comes to visit her and revel in her fame. She's a world famous courtesan. And he ends up changing her life and allowing her to accept Buddha and accept the Dharma, the way, the one, into her life, regardless of her being a prostitute. And she lives the rest of her life, which is unfortunately very short, living by this way, even though she's a prostitute. It's very beautiful mythology. It's very beautiful lore. And he captures it so perfectly in the lyrics of this song. Like, I was incredibly impressed. I did not know that he could write music like this. But also, the song was a bit more death metal than black metal, if we're talking about musical genres and influence. I really felt like the patterns and the harmonies and the melodies in here were really very death metal inspired, not necessarily black metal inspired. Of course, it was here and there. For instance, the drumming in this album, especially up to this point, is very black metal influenced, but when it came to the way he was writing riffs, it sounded more like death metal. And so the album really starts off like very esoteric in a way. If you don't know Japanese lore and you don't know Japanese culture like I did, you're gonna have to look these things up. And so as I was listening to the album, I was looking up the stories that were being talked about in these songs, and it just added so much depth to the music. But the further I listened on to this album, I didn't really understand why it was called a black metal project, and I don't understand why he was listing it as a black metal band. Because while there's tons of black metal influence in here, for instance, there's a lot of In the Night Side Eclipse vibes here, and that doesn't surprise me because Ishan was huge in the writing and recording of this album. It's not like a black metal album. I would never market this as a black metal album. There's too many different elements going on here. For instance, there's tons of feudal Japanese influence here that's incredibly beautiful, that adds a lot of depth to the music that he's writing. But then he breaks into a clean vocal pattern over top of some signature black metal blast beats, and it blows you away. It's very stellar. It's fantastic writing. He is killing it here. But it's not really pure black metal in any way, shape, or form. Like I said, the writing on here is absolutely stellar, and on a song like Ukumu, that might be the best breakdown that Heafy has ever freaking written, man. Like, dead serious. Check this out. And I didn't listen to any of the singles beforehand before listening to this whole album, so I was really surprised by every single song, especially when we got into the song Ronin and those sick black metal vocals kicked in, and I'm like, who the f***? What? That's the guy from My Chemical Romance? Are you kidding me? He's ripping black metal vocals out here? And that song in Ronin was probably the closest thing to pure black metal that you're gonna feel throughout this album. And you know what? This is so much more than a simple black metal project. This is so much more than what it's labeled as. The influence of Ishan from Emperor here is absolutely fantastic. It really fits in with the album, and you can really tell the influence that he had with Heafy, telling him and pushing him in different directions of where to go and how to write things. And of course, Nergal makes a quick fantastic cameo on Akumu, adding some Polish lyrics in it, and it makes such an awesome vibe. There's so much variety, there's so many different elements to the songs on this album mixed with Japanese culture and Polish language. It goes to show the beauty of different languages as well. Listening to this makes me think that Matt Heafy might be the most well-rounded musician in modern metal. Now, of course, there's musicians in the community that have had more schooling or they know more theory, but can they branch out like this and write something as beautiful and stellar as this, while also writing stuff that's a little more basic and a little more adaptable to mainstream ears, like what Trivium does? A very deep album overall with so many different influences. That doesn't mean that I don't have some critiques of it myself, though. I have to say that, again, the first two tracks on the album, they're more like just Trivium songs, kind of. And some of the riffs that are riddled throughout are kind of just sound like rip-off kind of Trivium riffs that weren't used in Trivium songs on Trivium albums. 98% of this album is brand new shit that you'd never hear Trivium release or you'd never heard Matt Heafy do before. But there's definitely some little bit of recycled material in here, I think, and I think that goes to show just the maturity and growth of Heafy as he wrote this side project, because again, it was over the span of 10 or 12 years. And so you'll notice on the first two tracks, like I said earlier, that they're definitely a bit more similar to what Trivium would write, but as you go further in the album and later on in the years, and later on as Matt Heafy grows as a man and a musician, you see that the tracks become way more well written, way more stellar, way more beautiful, and way less like Trivium. Adding up each individual score of each individual song and dividing by the number of songs on the album, we come to a final score of 9.0 out of 10, which of course on the heaviest show in the universe rating scale comes to an S tier banger, just right under goated status. On this album, Matt Heafy has shown what makes metal so fantastic. One of the best, if not the best, genres of music that can have so much depth and variety to it. This album contains so much borderline unfathomable depth with so many different cultural influences thrown in and so many different lores and mythologies in there that it'll keep you coming back to explore more meaning and more value behind the music that he's written here. And it goes to show just why he is metal's best ambassador in the modern age and one of the most well-rounded musicians in the scene. It's awesome to think that he's showing kids how cool and awesome and heavy black metal can be, because it's often looked at as a type of genre of music that's only for like the weirdest people. And it is only for, you know, some of the weirdest people, myself definitely included, but it's got so many elements to it that are so misunderstood, and it's awesome that Heafy, of all people, is bringing this to every single person in his scene, in his audience. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. What did you think of this album? Did you think it was more black metal than I did, or did you really enjoy it, or is it just not true cult enough for you? Let me know down below. We will see you next week on the heaviest show in the universe. Long live metal.